Welcome everyone to the 129th episode 100 Trends Literature Series. As you all know, it's been a unique platform to connect the authors with the readers. Our purpose for running this platform is to definitely encourage reading, but above all, to connect you all to these wonderful, wonderful writers and authors who have really put in years of hard work in putting together such amazing and inspirational books. So our guest author today is Anshu Arora. She happens to be a C-suite facilitator, speaker, coach, wonderful TEDx speaker. And now she's come out with such a wonderful book, Candid Conversations with Anshu Arora. And this is covering the real stories of grit and courage. Everyone out there definitely is fighting a battle, as we all know. But Anshu happens to have come out with this book. She's spoken to these all wonderful 11 people, 11 real stories of some very real people. But before, I would really like Anshu to talk about it. So I really welcome Anshu today. It's such a pleasure to have you with us today.
Thank you. Absolutely a pleasure, Neeta. And like I mentioned earlier, it's an honor for me to be on the show because I've been watching your podcast and the effort you make into understanding and not just reading a book. I think that's the most that anyone could ever ask for, especially somebody who writes. So thank you so much. I think it's an honor to be on your platform. Thank you.
Thank you so much for such kind words. You know, it is really motivating, especially when the new year is coming. And this is the start of the third season. So I'm looking forward to many such episodes, starting with you today, in the third season.
Absolutely. I'm happy to be stepping to 2024 with you, Neeta. Wish you good luck, and I hope we have many, many more grounds to cover and many more stories to talk about.
Thank you so much. You know, I went through this book and I couldn't really put it down. Such 11 strong stories put together, strung together, heartfelt. I felt so emotional at times because all the characters that you've penned so beautifully, you've really got their stories across so wonderfully. That speaks of the book, that speaks of your writing style, and that speaks so much about you as a person. But how were you able to put together this? I mean, this has been such a wonderful job of pulling together such amazing people to talk about their struggles, their courage in adversity, and process of healing. So, how were you able to really do such a noble job?
Well, now that you've read the book, you'd know that Dilshad has mentioned in her chapter that the dots will join, and you will know why. And I think that's the very reason that this book came together. I decided to pay forward what I had received in life, and I understood that very soon. I believe that that I wasn't crying over something too big. Of course, everybody has battles, and everybody who's in it thinks that it can't get worse, and indeed it does not get worse for that person. But when I just looked out, I realized that there were people fighting bigger battles and with even bigger smiles. And I thought that there is more to life, and it's really not worth sitting back and not letting life live you. And I honestly will tell you that I did not write this book was writing me. And that's how I would say. And these people just started coming together by virtue of a network, or when I just spoke to anyone and I said that, okay, I'm working on this something, do you know someone? I only had a broad skeleton in mind about the kind of people I wanted to cover, but I did not know who. And these people just walked in. So I guess, like Dilshad said, the dots joined. We all had one common thread, and that was hit, held, stopped, stood up again, and faced life. I think that's all. And like you already said, faced life with grit, courage, and made it an example of resilience. That's the only common thread. That's how it happened.
You've described it so well. This is how the book happened. And I must request everyone who started to watch this podcast to definitely read this book to understand the enormity, the depth of what we are talking about today. These have been 11 real stories of some very, very real people.
Yeah.
I'm sure there were many more stories, and it was definitely very, very difficult on your part to kind of put together these 11. So how was it that you could select these 11 and many more still to be untold, still to be told?
I'll be honest, Neeta, that I interviewed many more people than 11. But Neeta, it is so interesting that people came up, people started telling me their stories, and I was very intensely involved in understanding what they had to say. For example, when I interviewed Krishna, I could not write for days together because I was very, very overwhelmed. When I met Dilshad, I came home, and I think that very night I started writing because different people have different impacts on you. Not to say anything is, but I got really absorbed with what Krishna said. So there were a few people I met who shared their stories, and I understood, and got deeply involved in it. But there is a small act of authentication of content that I did because, like I said, I didn't know these people. Some of them are Googleable, some of them have already been written about, but I didn't know them, right? So when I authenticated the content, Neeta, I realized that some stories weren't true, and that too happened. And so you will not believe, I mean, I've heard stories about winning beauty crowns and coming out of the dumps, and then I realized that there was a whole different story behind it, and I decided to keep only those that were authenticated. And secondly, where I felt that there was this genuine chord of that connection that we're talking about. So I don't know, it was governed by gut. It was governed by a connection.
Intuition.
Yes,
Yeah.
very strong connection, I would say, yes.
That is why the books come out the way it is. It's, and you can, across the words, across the lines, across the paras, across the chapters, you can really come to know that, yes, these are, as I just keep on mentioning, real people. And your writing definitely portrays that, because you're so right about this authentication part, because all these look, sound, and read very, very authentic stories. So one can imagine the
I
kind of.
just want to add on the day of the book launch, Neeta. So Krishna was most
Yeah.
everybody in the book was there, barring a few who couldn't be here because they don't live in India. So when Krishna went up the stage, I think he was hugging and kissing everyone he met that day, and he kept saying that hundreds of people have interviewed me, and they have promised me that they will write. They promised me that they will, and they did. But they didn't even care to share a copy of that article with him. And he said, Anshu, this book is out. I'm in the book. You put my photo in it. You're inviting me to the book launch. I said, it's your book. It is our book. So I believe that that reciprocation, that is the vibe I'm talking about, Neeta. That it's just a set of some 11 genuine people who came across and just got together and with one message that let's, it's tough, but kind of give it a
Let's
shot.
fight it together.
Yeah, let's just give it a shot. Because if you would have read in the chapter where we've talked about addiction, and so
Yeah.
he said, Devajit has mentioned that nobody can get you out of any situation but yourself, and whether it's A, B, C, whatever the situation. So I guess eventually, Neeta, it was that one thing of, come on, let's all aspire to live this life, and happily
Yeah.
so. So
In the book, you're mentioning about this addiction part. Yes. If unless you have the will to do it, you would not be able to do it. That is the
yeah,
underlying message in that chapter. I remember. That all of these stories really touched my heart. But sometimes you have to speak about the ones that really, really made you, touch it more. One was, of course, You're Ready When You're Baked. One of the chapters,
yeah.
right? Then you have Don't Let the Old Man In, profound, deep, and of course, your story. In Search of the Pure Vida, Pure Life, that means. Which one has been the closest to you? I know. It's like asking a mother, to choose among their babies, and that is the most difficult part. How about you? But still, I have to ask you this.
I'll say there's something different in every chapter because there's a different learning. So, for example, when I interviewed Dilshad, 40 steps at a time, it's got etched in my heart. I'm sure that's the same with you, Neeta. There is no other way of doing it because it's such a humongous task to put yourself together and to start walking again. It cannot be done at one go. It has to be 40 steps at a time. I loved what Mandeep Singh Soin said, that courage is grace under pressure. And he said that let's move life camp by camp. I loved when Colin said, "You're ready when you're baked," and that's the only chapter I did not retitle. So for every chapter, I did write a title, but for Colin's chapter, he gave me this title. So he said, "You're ready when you're baked," and I reread, reabsorbed that line 100 times, and I said, "Yes." And you're not baked yet. So it's any situation in life and it's not happening. Okay, baby, you're not baked yet. Hold on for a bit and let it get ready. When I met Samindara, she told me that of so many hundreds of people that she counsels, the biggest barrier that she's found is that all people need to do is to talk to each other, and communication as the base of every solution. So there is a little piece of a favorite piece split into 11 parts, I would say. And I mean, I cannot forget certain chapters which are very, all these stories are very personal, Neeta. It takes somebody, uh, I mean, when I've interviewed, I've had somebody lying over a hammock and crying for hours, all full hours of dictating the story. Or when I sat in Dilshad's room, I have photos of Akshay all around the walls. These things impact you. So it's very difficult to choose one, but I guess I have stolen one little piece from every chapter and kept it intact. Yes.
And also for readers to remember this particular story, you've done a very good thing. All the chapters have special lines they start with, and then there are a few words at the end, which kind of gives you the gist, the main takeaway from the books. Like your story is in search of pure Vida, then you're ready when you're baked. It's more than just music. So suddenly you can go back and you know that this story was about that. And that's how I can remember all the stories, because I remember the gist and you made it easy for the readers. I mean, they know what it was about and they can go back to their own story maybe time and time again. In the first chapter, which was Swing It Like the Gallant Roo, Roo was is the cat of Dilshad. I still cannot get over Dilshad's life. And one of the lines in the book was, hold on to the people who bring the best in you. And also, as you mentioned, walking 40 steps at a time. Tell me, what were your thoughts when you were stringing this story together?
I met Ruth. I met Saira, Dilshad's daughter. I sat in their living room for hours, and then I've had pre and post interactions with Dilshad. Dilshad is vast. She's deep beyond this chapter. And I'll just say something off the book, which will tell you why she's so close to my heart. Recently, one of my very close friends met with a life-threatening accident, and she had to undergo brain surgery and things like that. And so it was difficult for her to comprehend, to speak again. And she had my book, and she started reading that book. And the first chapter she picked up was Dilshad's, and in the piece where it's written about her car crash. And then she said to me that if Dilshad can do this, I'm going to try. And I phoned up Dilshad and I told her this is happening, Neeta. She sent a long voice note for my friend explaining her experiences. and much beyond what was written in the chapter, about, her eyes were shut for 2 months after the accident because the glass had gone in her eyes and things like that, and how she stood back up. And the moment my friend heard that audio note, uh, I mean, she's reading now, okay? She's speaking, she's fine, she's getting better. That is Dilshad. She is the person who is in the book. She's not a story. She is that human, and a vast, deeper human than those 10, 15 pages can ever describe. That Dilshad I have known, and it's very difficult to accommodate all of that in one chapter. I saw that human in that living room. I still, when I read it, I see, oh, I wish I would have said that. Oh, I wish she could have added that. But she's so vast, I cannot complete. And these 40 steps at a time were lines given by Akshay to Dilshad. And I'm just holding the baton on and making it travel as far as I can.
No, it's kind of become an anthem for me also. I mean, I was conceptualizing the season 3, and I was thinking about 40 steps at a time. I said, yeah, that's how it should be. I mean, you should keep on going, and then maybe together you look back and how much you've achieved.
Yes.
I saw a little video on Insta that you had put up about Dilshad, and when she's speaking, that strength comes across.
Yeah.
We are discussing the stories, the various stories that you put about, but what was the common factor you think was there in stringing these stories? And what do you think, would you say that, yes, this is what made me string these stories together, the common factor?
Neeta, as I said, the adversity is different for each one, right? For Dilshad, was loss of someone very close to her. For Krishna, it's a struggle for identity. Imagine that. I don't know if there's any bigger struggle than that, when you're not known for what you are, and you have
And
to
your
fight
parents
to
also don't
prove.
accept you.
Yeah, and you fight to prove, excuse me, this is me. I mean, we take that for granted. And imagine somebody spent his whole life proving to the world or fighting for identity, and having the courage to bring so many more people together and supporting them. So the point I'm trying to make is that the reason that led to everybody's journey was different. But I think the connecting chord for all these chapters, one of I think my tattoos explains that, and that is Atraversiamo. Atraversiamo means let's cross over. And it means that nothing in life is etched in stone. And whenever you wish, whenever you're ready, you can get up. You can say, this is not how my life is going to be. You get up, you cross that bridge. It's really that simple, or as difficult as we make it. And that was the connecting chord for each chapter. There are moments of Attraversiamo in each chapter. And that was my connection with each of these people. And I believe also the connecting chord that binds this whole book together. Everybody found that one moment and said, no, this is not how I'm going to define my life. I'm going to get up and I'm going to cross this bridge. And I don't know what's on the other side, but I will figure it out. And that's what each one did. And that's the core.
Very beautifully expressed. And I mean, I was also thinking the kind of, it's not only impacted us as readers, but you as an author, it would have impacted you. You're carrying this impression. And as you were saying, maybe you would have written much more, and there are few things that you would have put in also. But you have recently given a wonderful, I've been hearing about it, a TEDx talk. So how have these stories really impacted you? I know the topics were different, but how did you kind of merge it together? And maybe...
Well, that TEDx norms are that it has to be your own copyright content. And for me, my copyrighted content is my book. So I pulled up broad 4 learnings from the book, and I married that into leadership, which is what I do for a living. So I picked up the aspects of course, 40 steps at a time, and that life needs to be moved camp by camp, rather than looking at the whole summit that you want to reach. I've also talked about this very important piece in Debajit's chapter, where he's talked about how any home that is like a hotel, restaurant, zoo, or a crematorium will lead to people with emotional imbalances. And I think that has moved me. Neeta, I'll be honest that I think I've lived in all four. So whether it is a hotel, so a place where you check in and you check out and you don't care who's living in the next room, a restaurant where you just your food, your table, you look at people around but you're not bothered, a zoo, which is a place of loud noise, cacophony, fights, and a crematorium where there's absolute dead silence, where in short nobody talks to each other. So in my leadership perspective, I've talked about a similar perspective, and waking up to reality that this is the truth. This is happening in many homes today. And people with these kind of emotional imbalances will come to work. They will have a workspace. And how sensitive can we be to an individual like that who will bring in personal challenges, mental health issues, or identity crisis like Krishna? So how are we ready really for this level of leadership? So I've brought in aspects from the book and married it to what the future of leadership should ideally look like. So yes, that's what the TED Talk is all about. And I'm waiting for the video to be out soon.
Yes, yes. And I'm waiting too, but I'm sure. And the kind of write-ups and everything, a little that I know what you've spoken there has been phenomenal. And I wish you all the luck. And I'm sure there'll be many more TEDx for us
Yes, yes,
soon.
yes, absolutely.
You know, your go-to place, I know you've written, that gives you a lot of solace is Cafe de Ghent, right? That I hope I pronounced it right. They've been mentioned very, very fondly in the 11th story.
Yeah.
You talk about the de Ghent community. You also talk about that you cannot, I mean, I personally cannot wait to visit the place. And you mentioned that how happy experiences make you lighter. I think that is one takeaway from that book with the chapter. So, I mean, also Mr. Bal, I think that's his name, and he mentions that he is able to read the energy of the person walking in the cafe. So, tell us more about this chapter. You seem to really enjoy the space and the happier vibes, the happiness and the little corner that it gives you. So, I'd like to talk because that chapter is interesting to read.
Yes, Neeta, you know, so what happens is that when you're, like I said, when you're in the process of a traversiamo, so when you're crossing that bridge, that too is a journey. You just don't get up, you run and it's done in 100 meters, right? So it takes days, months, and years sometimes to cross that bridge, and it's a journey. And I think the chapter on which covers de Ghent and the philosophy that Ball carries is essentially about us finding a place of solace where you can sit down, be yourself, not be questioned, and where the vibe positively impacts you. For me, because I love coffee so much, so for me it was de Ghent. I started going there. I remember 31st of December, very close to the time that we're doing this right now. So that was the first time. I mean, I had gone before, but I started making it my sacred space around that time. And I had this little corner, two white chairs and a round table, which was my corner, where I have most of the book also I've sat and written there as well. So I found that as a place where I was not questioned, where nobody bothered me, where I could do my journey of that crossover. And that book, that chapter encourages that each one of us must find that place. For me, it was de Ghent. For you, it could be a friend's home. Or for somebody else, it could be a little place under a tree. For someone, it could just be a place where you go take a walk. So the idea there is that find that space that doesn't judge you. Find that space where you can, kind of let your shoulders down and open up your scarf and say, okay, I'm sitting here now. And I don't know, I have no agenda. I'm just going to quietly walk my bridge. And that's what the end is for me. And you must visit there with me. That will be my
Yes,
honor to take
very
you there.
soon. I hope we are able to do it as soon as possible.
Yes, please. My honor, indeed.
Coming, I think this is the right moment to come to your story. In Search of Pure Life. This book,
Yeah.
I must tell everyone, could not have been complete without Anshu's chapter. It kind of binds everything together. I mean, the significance of 7 tattoos that you mentioned there, your bond with your father. It was an emotionally charged story. And definitely it is so significant. These two things are so significantly entrenched in the story. Must say that you've been an inspiration in adversity. You decided to remain sane, focused, and grounded. And as I just mentioned, that book could not have been complete without candid conversation that you have with yourself that gets across in the book, binds all the chapters together. And yes, I must say here, the dots did join. So you also mentioned, and I remember one line, and that I've categorically written down, that best thing one can do when it is raining is to let it rain. So I would like you to talk a little bit about the chapter that you've written yourself on yourself.
Inish, I just did an interview a few months ago, and there was a senior lady who came to listen to that interview. It was live in a cafe, and she told me that she'd read that chapter, and she said, I mean, just like a little blessing, she told me, you should be grateful for all the people you met, and you should be grateful for what they did to you. If they would not have come into your life and not done what they did, this would have never happened. And it was important for this book to happen. And I say that as a reader. I think that day I wished my father was there to, sometimes what is the biggest joy for, I don't know, I mean, daughters are attached to fathers. It's something like that, right? So, I mean, it's like that joy of uh, holding your trophy or a medal or a book in my case, hold it in your hand and just kind of run and say, look what I got. So that is the day when she told me that piece about my chapter. And I thought, that's it, no, Neeta, that's why it is. So, well, I'm grateful. I'm grateful for whoever came into my life, and I'm not trying to be very, very author like and very saintly, but genuinely there are days when I recall those things and I feel bad and sometimes feel used or sometimes feel angry. But largely I'm okay. I'm okay because I have been blessed abundantly. I mean, I have no way to count how many blessings have walked my way just because I decided it's okay. Let's take it in
It's
His
now.
grace. Yeah, let's just take it in His grace and let's walk on and let's cross the bridge, inshallah, and let's see where it takes us. And so, yes, thank you for those experiences and thank you for coming in my life and thank you for being integral to that book being where it is now. And I'm abundantly blessed. Really, I am. And this book, the love I'm getting because of this book. See, we met because of the book, right? And I've met so many more beautiful people like you and it's not an acknowledgement of the book, but it's about meeting wonderful people. It's about so much to learn and the good vibes you get. And this is a new life. This is a new circle of people. And And the joy of growing and the joy of this little decision of, come on, let's try to be happy and let's cross over, just change the whole dynamics. And that's what this chapter is all about.
Wonderful. How well summarized. So much of positivity in this. And, even in chapter 7, when it is You're Ready When You Baked, this interview with Colleen Hall, since because of paucity of time, I can only refer to it, that, it also moved me tremendously, because I realized it's important to, as you just mentioned, to cross the bridge to heal.
Yeah.
And definitely people need to be heard. Thank you, Anshu, for such a wonderful conversation. I am enlightened, I am delighted, and I am in some way healed also. And thank you for writing such a wonderful book. We all know, as we have been mentioning, that everyone has been fighting a battle, and through these wonderful interviews that you brought together, they bring out the very essence of healing through very simple, relatable narrative that you put the book through. Any last words on the book, and before we wind up?
Absolutely. I hope people can pick up this book. And I just as I often write when I sign a book, is may you find what you're seeking in this book. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thanks.
Thank you. And I highly recommend to everyone this book. It's an inspirational read. Keep up the good work, Anshu. And I definitely hope to read and really read a lot of books from your side. I'm sure it'll heal a lot of people. It'll enamor a lot of people with a lot of goodness and good vibes.
And there are 2 minutes. I'm going to steal 1 minute to thank you.
Sure. We have around 2 minutes. Don't worry.
Yeah. So I just want to thank you. Not just thank you for doing this interview, but I am genuinely delighted at the wonderful work you're doing, because you will not believe, I've met so many people who say, okay, so can you send me the interviews, that the questions that you want me to ask you in the interview? Okay, can you send me a summary of the book? And here I met this wonderful lady who says, okay, hold on, let me first read the book. And you got me at. So thank you very much. You are wonderful. I've genuinely been waiting for this, and I've loved interacting with you, and the true love for reading that you bring. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Anshu. You made my day. You made my rest of year, and you've made my coming years by saying such wonderful words. And thank you, everyone who will be watching this interview. Must watch the whole interview and definitely read this book. And you can order it on Amazon. It's available there. And it's always my pleasure to host these wonderful interviews. Request everyone to please subscribe to the channel so that more and more people can watch this interview.